I need you to pay very close attention because what I'm about to share is not symbolic and it's not superstition. It's something I learned firsthand when I was deeply involved in witchcraft during a specific window of time we watched every single year, January 22 through January 31. To most people, those dates mean nothing. The holidays are over. Life feels normal again. People are tired, distracted, and trying to get back on track. But in the occult, this period was never ignored. It was marked, observed, monitored. We called it a stabilization window, a time when whatever had been planted earlier in the month was either reinforced or cancelled, and the enemy paid close attention to one thing above all else during these 10 days, what people agreed with out loud. I remember sitting in rooms where assignments were reviewed, not to attack aggressively, but to listen, to observe speech, to note patterns, because witchcraft does not function on power alone, it functions on permission. What shocked me most wasn't how complex these strategies were, it was how fragile they were. Entire assignments could collapse because of one word spoken by a believer who understood authority. And that's why I'm speaking now. I didn't leave witchcraft just to say, the devil is real. You already know that. I left to expose how easily his plans fail when truth is applied correctly. If you felt unusual pressure, confusion, fatigue, or resistance during the last part of January in past years, this message may finally explain why. And more importantly, it will show you how simple it is to shut it down permanently. In witchcraft, timing mattered not because dates had power, but because human behavior followed predictable patterns. By January 22, people are usually tired of trying. Resolutions feel heavy. Momentum slows. Hope weakens quietly. And when hope weakens, speech changes. That's what we watched. The enemy doesn't need loud rebellion. He needs subtle agreement. Phrases like, it's always like this. Nothing ever sticks. I don't see change. Maybe this is just my life. Those statements were treated as open doors. January 22, 31 was when we attempted to lock in discouragement to make temporary frustration feel permanent. But there was one word that destroyed that entire strategy every time it was spoken with understanding, not shouted in anger, not spoken sarcastically, but declared calmly with authority. Enough is not emotional language. It is legal language in the spiritual realm. When a believer said, enough, this ends here, it signaled the withdrawal of permission. And witchcraft cannot operate without permission. We were trained to disengage when that word was spoken with clarity, because it closed the loop, it cancelled repetition, it ended cycles. Fear feeds witchcraft. Exhaustion sustains it, but authority terminates it. Nof means no further access, no continued agreement, no extension of this cycle. And when spoken in faith, it was devastating. In scripture, authority is tied to boundaries. God sets limits. He establishes ends. He says, thus far and no farther. When you say, enough, you are aligning your speech with divine boundary setting. Witchcraft thrives where boundaries are vague. It fails where lines are drawn. That's why endless complaining helped the enemy, but decisive speech shut him down. Here's what most people don't realize: they cancel their own authority by reversing their declarations. They say, enough, then follow it with doubt. They say, I'm done, then rehearse fear. They pray, then panic. In witchcraft, we counted on this inconsistency. Authority is not about passion, it's about agreement. When enough is spoken and followed by peace, rest, and trust, the door stays closed. This matters deeply. Say it once, calmly. Say it intentionally. Say it without explanation. You don't argue with darkness, you dismiss it. Enough. This cycle ends here, though. Enough. This pressure stops now. Enough. I am not agreeing with this anymore. Then rest. Rest seals authority. We feared what came next, peace. Peace meant the person wouldn't reopen the door emotionally. Peace meant no panic, no frantic prayers, no fear-based decisions. Peace made the cancellation permanent. January 22, 31 tests whether people will live from frustration or authority. The enemy hopes you'll vent. God invites you to govern. One word spoken correctly outweighs 10 days of pressure whispered, authority defeats shouted fear. You don't need to fight harder. You need to stand clearer. Momentum returns quietly. Pressure lifts subtly. Clarity replaces confusion. Witchcraft doesn't always leave loudly, but it leaves completely. Don't monitor the enemy. Don't replay the struggle. Don't wait for confirmation. Say the word, seal it with peace, and move forward. I didn't leave witchcraft to give you techniques. I left to tell you this truth. Darkness is not complex, it is conditional. And one word, spoken with authority, removes the condition. Say it enough. Welcome to the restoration path. Let me explain something we understood very clearly in the occult. Not every attack is meant to destroy you. Some are meant to measure you. Chapter 8 is about that measurement. During seasons like this, the enemy isn't asking, can I overpower them? He's asking, will they surrender authority without realizing it? That's why pressure often feels repetitive instead of explosive. The same thoughts, the same frustrations, the same delays. It's a test to see whether you will react emotionally or respond spiritually. In witchcraft, we watched closely during moments of exhaustion. Tired people are more likely to complain. Discouraged people are more likely to speak loosely. And spoken words, especially repeated ones, become agreements. But here's the truth most believers don't hear enough. Silence mixed with authority is more powerful than noise mixed with fear. When you refuse to rehearse the problem, when you stop explaining your pain to everyone, when you choose peace instead of panic, that's not weakness, that's governance. This chapter is where many people unknowingly fail the test. They pray correctly but live anxiously. They declare victory but expect defeat. And that inner contradiction reopens doors they thought were closed. The test is simply, will you keep standing after you've spoken authority? Because once you've said enough, heaven is listening, but so is the enemy, and what follows that word matters just as much as the word itself. Rest proves trust. Peace proves authority. Stillness proves the battle is no longer yours. This is why chapter 8 is crucial. Not because of what you say, but because of what you refuse to say afterward. The test ends when you stop reacting, and that's when the pressure breaks. There is a moment the enemy never prepares for, the moment nothing works anymore. In the occult, when an assignment failed, we didn't immediately retreat. We escalated. More pressure, more confusion, more emotional agitation. Not because we were winning, but because we were running out of access. Chapter 9 is about that escalation phase. This is when distractions increase. People misunderstand you for no clear reason. Old memories resurface. Random irritation tries to pull you back into reaction. It feels sudden, but it's strategic. The enemy is attempting to provoke a response that will reopen the door that authority already closed. Here's what exposes the failure. When the attack becomes louder but less effective, if fear no longer takes root, if peace returns faster, if your sleep is no longer disturbed, that's not coincidence. That's evidence. In witchcraft, we mark that stage as resistance stabilized. It meant the person was no longer vulnerable to emotional manipulation. Their spirit had settled into alignment, and alignment is dangerous to darkness. This is why chapter 9 feels strange. You're not fully at rest, but you're no longer shaken. You notice pressure, but it doesn't own you. The enemy is present, yet powerless. This is where many people make a mistake. They assume the fight is still intense and start over praying, over talking, over reacting. But escalation doesn't mean dominance, it means desperation. When heaven has backed your authority, hell can only make noise. And noise is not power. The counterattack fails the moment you recognize it for what it is, a last attempt to reclaim influence that's already been revoked. So, in this chapter, don't engage, don't argue, don't explain, stand, observe, remain calm, because once escalation fails, withdrawal is inevitable, and when the enemy withdraws, restoration begins.